I'm Kirtop, and these are 100 finds from excavations that have been officially classified. An underground chamber beneath the pyramids. Scientists from Japan and Egypt conducted a study of the giant necropolis in Giza. Their attention was drawn to a site in the Western Cemetery. Members of the ruling family and high-ranking officials were buried here. The burials were in tombs with flat roofs, arranged in a row. There is an open area between them that had not been studied before. Japanese and Egyptian scientists studied it using ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography, which allowed them to look deep inside without excavating. The scans showed that at a depth of 0.5 meter to 2 meters, there is an L-shaped structure about 10 by 10 meters in size. The authors of the study believe that this is not a natural formation, but an artificial one, due to its regular shape and location. The researchers suggest that this structure may be part of a deeper formation. At a depth of 5 to 10 meters, the instruments also detected an anomaly indicating
неоднородность породы. Это может быть еще одной гробницей или камера с артефактами.
Yamashita's gold. One of the most thrilling and mysterious stories related to World War II is the legend of Yamashita's gold. This story begins with the Japanese general Tomoyuki Yamashita, who, according to numerous accounts, managed to amass a huge treasure captured during the Japanese military campaigns throughout Southeast Asia. The legend claims that at the end of the war, foreseeing inevitable defeat, Yamashita and his subordinates hid these treasures in various locations in the Philippines. Since then, Yamashita's gold has become the subject of numerous expeditions and searches, attracting treasure hunters, historians, and adventurers from all over the world. But no expedition has yet been able to find definitive evidence of the existence of these treasures. The legend of Yamashita's gold has accumulated layers of myth and speculation, claiming that among the hidden riches were not only treasures, gold, and precious stones, but also artifacts of incredible historical and cultural value. According to one version, the Japanese command used a complex system of ciphers and maps to mark where the treasures were stored, but many of these ciphers and maps were lost or destroyed in the final days of the war. In attempts to unravel the mystery of Yamashita's gold, dozens of expeditions were undertaken, some of which ended in tragedies and even deaths. This highlights the dangers associated with treasure hunting and the difficulty of searching in the jungles and mountainous regions of the Philippines. The story of Yamashita's gold continues to inspire a new generation of explorers. It serves as a reminder that many mysteries of World War II remain unsolved to this day. And who knows, maybe someday someone will be able to solve the mystery and discover the lost treasures. A vessel made from a giant emerald. Real treasures are not just the jewelry of kings and noble ladies. Among them are incredibly beautiful items that a modern person cannot wear or use in everyday life. One such item is the emerald vessel that once belonged to Emperor Ferdinand II. The emerald vessel is a fairly large container of irregular shape with a miniature dome-shaped lid. Gold enamel with small inclusions of polished green stone was used for decoration. The metal pattern wraps around the vessel, giving it an even more majestic and luxurious appearance. A 2,680-carat emerald was needed to create this work of art. The giant was mined in the Muzo mines located in Colombia. Unfortunately, we cannot trace this moment. We can only assume that the emerald of unprecedented size was purchased by Rudolph II himself. The stone is mentioned in the inventory of the Imperial Collection from 1616. The English medieval well of St. Anne. According to legend, near Liverpool there is a real healing well that was attributed to St. Anne. The well was built in honor of Anna, the mother of the Virgin Mary, around 1066 in the 16th era. It was said that it could heal all diseases, especially skin and eye conditions. The well was located on the grounds of the church and was under the protection of the monks. One day, a local landowner named Hugh Darcy came to the abbot, Father Dilawani, with a request to transfer the land to him. The Holy Father refused the request and decided to take steps so that this man's lands would no longer belong to him. Later, the monk was expelled from the monastery by royal decree. When Dilawani was passing by the former church, he saw that same Darcy at the well. He had good relations with the local authorities, which allowed him to easily take possession of the well. The Holy Father was furious when he learned the landowner was responsible. He cast the curse of the serpent, which strikes down a dishonorable man, and his conquest would bring him neither benefit nor glory, for St. Anna had struck his head. Darcy demolished all the buildings on that land and kept saying that he was being haunted by a dark, sinister force, that he felt as if evil was approaching. A few months later, his beloved son died of an unknown illness. Darcy's life's work suffered heavy losses. It all ended when one night Darcy got very drunk, and in the morning he was found by the healing well with his head split open. The Art Collection. In 2012, a discovery in Munich shocked the global creative community. In a modest-sized apartment, a collection of paintings confiscated by the Nazis was found, valued at $1 billion. Among the works were pieces by masters such as Marc Chagall, Pablo Picasso, and Henri Matisse. This collection represents lost treasures of European art, many of which were considered missing for decades. The paintings fell into the hands of the Nazis as a result of a large-scale campaign to confiscate works of art that the regime considered degenerate or belonging to Jewish families. Many of these works were taken from their owners in the pre-war and wartime years, and after the war were considered lost or destroyed. The discovery of this collection was made possible by an investigation by the German authorities, who were investigating a case of tax fraud. The investigation led to a search of an apartment where these priceless works of art were discovered. The collection included both well-known masterpieces and lesser-known works, which nevertheless have great artistic and historical value. The discovery caused an international stir, as it raised questions about ownership rights, restitution, and moral responsibility. For many descendants of Jewish families who were deprived of their treasures by the Nazis, this discovery offered hope for the return of lost works of art that have become symbols of their history and heritage. The world's first gold. In Bulgaria, archaeologists excavated a burial site that turned out to be unlike anything else in the world. A man was buried here, and next to him were ornaments and objects made of gold. They date from 4,400 to 4,100 BC. That makes this the oldest worked gold ever found. It is older than the Egyptian pyramids and Sumerian cities, older than all the known kingdoms that we are used to calling the cradle of civilization. Necklaces, bracelets, plates, and beads have been preserved in the grave, and all of this is made with such craftsmanship that it's hard to believe how ancient it is. Archaeologists were especially interested in a piece of gold placed between the deceased's legs. Scientists suggest that this item had ritual significance, connected with beliefs in the afterlife and ideas about fertility. The burial shows that even then, gold was perceived not just as a beautiful metal, but as a symbol of power and spiritual strength. These findings are attributed to the Varna culture, one of the mysterious civilizations of southeastern Europe. The people who left these rich graves lived even before the emergence of known empires, and their achievements are still not fully understood. But one thing is clear: thousands of years before the Common Era, humanity already knew how to extract and process gold, turning it into an object of worship. Satellite data. Modern satellite images, available through various internet platforms such as Google Earth, show possible entrances to underground bases in Antarctica. One such example is images showing strange holes in the ice sheet that resemble artificial structures. On South Georgia Island, satellite images have also been discovered that, according to some researchers, indicate a possible UFO crash. One such image was found on Google Earth, and it shows an object resembling a crashed spacecraft. The image sparked interest among ufologists and internet researchers, who suggested that it could be debris of extraterrestrial origin. Some of these objects have unusual shapes and sizes that are difficult to explain by natural processes. The alleged UFO on South Georgia Island is often compared to the interstellar object Oumuamua, which attracted the attention of scientists in 2017. Oumuamua, discovered as the first known interstellar object passing through the solar system, has an unusual shape and trajectory that does not match the characteristics of ordinary asteroids or comets. This has led to hypotheses that it could be an alien probe or spacecraft. a ritual during the transfer of power. At the archaeological excavations of the Yucanal settlement in northern Guatemala, traces of an ancient ritual have been discovered, which may have symbolized the public replacement of the old regime in the Maya civilization. In the upper part of the temple pyramid, charred human bones and royal ornaments were found. These artifacts may indicate special burial rites or ceremonies. Analysis showed that the bones belonged to at least 4 adults, 3 of whom have been identified as men. One of the skeletons was exposed to high temperatures, over 800 degrees. This study confirms that the remains found could have belonged to members of the royal family, who were originally buried elsewhere, and centuries later were burned as part of a ritual related to their transfer to the pyramid. Among the items found were 1,500 fragments of various ornaments, pendants, beads, plates, and mosaics made of green stone, obsidian items, blades, 10,000 beads made from seashells, as well as pendants made from mammal teeth. Fragments of a mosaic funerary mask made of green stone were also discovered, which is typical for royal burials from that period. Radiocarbon analysis indicates that the deaths of the people occurred about 100 years before the burning. This confirms the theory that the burial could have been part of a ritual, marking the symbolic and literal destruction of the previous dynasty of the Convitional line. This could have been a highly ceremonial event associated with a change in the political order in the region. The Gorham Caves, located in the southeastern part of Gibraltar on the Mediterranean side, is named after a British military officer. He was the one who discovered them in 1907. Experts have been studying the Vanguard Cave, which is part of this complex, since 2012 when new large-scale excavations began there. Specialists are trying to determine its true size and check if there are any passages and chambers filled with sand. In August 2021, a group of scientists led by Clive Finlayson, a biologist, evolutionist, and director of the Gibraltar National Museum, came across a gap that they managed to widen enough for a person to crawl through. The gap led the scientists to a 13-meter chamber in the upper part of the cave where stalactites hung from the ceiling and traces of an ancient earthquake could be seen. It's a real room. Its discovery can be compared to the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb. You enter a space where no one has been for 40,000 years. It's astonishing. Inside the chamber, there were lynx bones, vertebrae of a spotted hyena, a fragment of a griffin vulture's wing, and a large shell. On the walls, 6 or 7 scratches were found, made by the claws of some small animal, possibly the same lynx. In the Vanguard Cave itself, many traces of ancient Neanderthal presence were discovered, remains of hearths, stone tools, and the bones of hunted animals, including deer, ibex, seals, and dolphins. 4 years ago, researchers also discovered a milk tooth belonging to a 4-year-old Neanderthal child who was probably torn apart by hyenas. The group hopes that studying the new chamber as well as additional side passages will lead them to an unusual burial site, since Neanderthals were unlikely to leave the remains of their fellow tribesmen near the hearth. The Enigma Machine. The Enigma Machine is one of the most iconic symbols of 20th century cryptography. Created by German engineer Arthur Scherbius after World War I, it was originally intended for commercial use, but was quickly adopted by the military as the main tool for encrypting communications. Enigma is an electromechanical device based on a complex system of rotating rotors and electrical circuits. Each keystroke caused the rotors to rotate, creating a new encryption every time. With more than 150 quintillion combinations, Enigma turned out to be an impregnable fortress. At the height of World War II, breaking the Enigma codes was so important for the Allies that a team of leading mathematicians and cryptographers, including Alan Turing, was assembled at Bletchley Park in the United Kingdom. Turing and his colleagues developed a series of devices known as bombs, which were able to automate the process of breaking Enigma codes, significantly speeding it up. After the war, the Enigma machines and the stories about their decryption became surrounded by many legends and myths, becoming a symbol of intellectual confrontation during times of global conflict. Today, Enigma exhibits can be seen in museums around the world, reminding us of the complexity of war, the importance of intelligence, and the invaluable contribution of scientists to the victory over Nazism. A 10-meter kraken shaped like a cone. No fish yet, but you'll manage, said Mother Nature, 470 million years ago, and released giant cephalopod mollusks into the world's oceans. It turned out so well that they ruled the seas for the next 50 million years. And today we'll talk about a creature that could still inspire terror, even now. Meet Camaraoceras, a prehistoric kraken 10 meters long. To begin with, the genus name is a big wastebasket for taxonomists. It's kind of like the diagnosis vegetavascular dystonia. In modern medicine, it's what you call something when the nature of the condition is unclear, but you still need a label for it. So, when in doubt, the owner of a huge cone-shaped shell will be classified as Camaraoceras. A relative of modern octopuses, cuttlefish, and squids looked quite impressive. The creature hid in a shell up to 10 meters long. From under the armor of the shell, grasping tentacles stuck out, hiding a powerful beak deep inside. These extinct triangles could truly be considered Bermuda Triangles. Entire prehistoric squids would disappear inside them. The mollusk would grind up sluggish trilobites and sea scorpions into dust inside its shell. Primitive animals often walked into Camaraoceras' mouth. The prehistoric kraken waited on the bottom for careless prey to wander into its strike zone. At the same time, it's not clear how the titanic mollusk found its prey. There's a common belief that its eyesight wasn't very good. At the same time, modern predatory relatives of Camaraoceras rely primarily on their eyes when hunting. Some can distinguish colors, while others can gather and filter light. And since no one has ever found fossilized eyes of Camaraoceras, the question remains open. No body, no case. Scientists have announced a sensational discovery in Germany, the oldest human tooth. Ancient dental fossils estimated to be almost 10 million years old, and which, according to them, do not fit into the established chronology of human history. What is truly shocking is that one of these fossils resembles the teeth of the earliest human ancestors. However, until now, such teeth have only been found in Africa, not in Europe. And even then, the known fossil record is millions of years younger. Discovered in September 2016 near the German town of Eppelsheim, the two well-preserved teeth are dated to about 9.7 million years ago. One of the teeth, the upper right first molar, is similar in characteristics to other specimens found in this area, but the other tooth, the upper left one, is different, and researchers say that its outline and shape make it resemble the teeth of hominin species, including Australopithecus afarensis. The problem is that Lucy is estimated to be only 3 million years old, and it is believed that the earliest ancestors of humanity began their migration from Africa to Europe and Asia about 100,000 years ago. So the question is, who did these teeth belong to, which ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time, and how did they get there? The oldest liquid wine, Spanish scientists discovered a glass urn with cremated remains and liquid in an ancient Roman underground mausoleum in Carmona, and the liquid turned out to be the oldest known wine. The find is about 2,000 years old. Carmona, located in Andalusia, was a major city in the Roman province of Baetica in the 1st centuries AD. The city has preserved the ruins of an amphitheater and a necropolis, where archaeological discoveries are still being made. In 2019, archaeologists found the entrance to an underground tomb, which is believed to have belonged to a wealthy family. Inside, they discovered 8 niches for urns, 6 of which contained cremated remains. One of the glass urns also contained a gold ring with an image of Janus and a red-colored liquid. Chemical analysis confirmed that it was wine, which had changed color due to chemical processes over 2,000 years. The use of wine in Roman funerary rituals is well documented. Wine was added to the urn after placing the cremated remains to help the deceased in the afterlife. This find is important evidence of Roman customs and a confirmation of the longevity of their traditions. Earlier, other interesting artifacts were found in the mausoleum, such as an ancient Roman unguentarium with remnants of perfume made from patchouli essential oil. The forgotten secret of the Andes. In the mountains of Peru, archaeologists have discovered a city that is about 3,500 years old. It was named Pendico, and judging by the findings, was far from being a simple settlement. At 600 meters altitude, Temples, residential complexes, and round terrace buildings remain. The central square's walls feature bas-reliefs of shell trumpets. These instruments produced a low, resonant sound that could be heard for many kilometers. Clay figurines, necklaces made of beads and shells, and remnants of ritual objects were also found here. Everything suggests that this place played an important role, not only in the lives of the local inhabitants, but also in the connections between different cultures. Scientists believe that Pindico was a trading hub that connected the coast with the Andes and the Amazon jungle. The city flourished around the same time as the first civilizations of the Middle East and Asia. But what surprised archaeologists the most is that it is located very close to Coral, the oldest civilization in America, which is more than 5,000 years old. Coral developed in isolation and disappeared due to climate change, while Pindico seemed to be a continuation of this tradition. Today, Peru is known for its great monuments, Machu Picchu and the mysterious Nazca Lines. But such discoveries remind us that the history of this land is even deeper than it seems. Civilizations were born here that lived and disappeared long before the empires we know appeared. People with black blood, high in the Andes, at an altitude of over 3,800 meters, lies Lake Titicaca. It is very large and cold. One of the highest lakes in the world is located between Bolivia and Peru, a region that has long been inhabited by indigenous people. Its shores are inhabited by the Quechua and Aymara tribes, who are descendants of the Inca civilization. But in the very heart of the lake lives a strange people who do not communicate with others and consider themselves to be of a different kind, not of the human race. The Uru people speak the dead language Pukina, which was probably spoken by the inhabitants of the Tiwanaku civilization, a very ancient and powerful indigenous culture. It was one of the first empires ruled by Khans. Its inhabitants created a large-scale irrigation system and a megalithic stone city. It is believed that the Uru are direct descendants of the Tiwanaku Empire. They once ruled over all of the central Andes. According to the locals, the Uru have always been here, and throughout their lives they have remained isolated and lived on the lake. According to historians, the Uru Indians were pushed by settlers from the plains into marshy areas, and then they eventually moved onto the lake. They adapted to life on homemade floating islands, even though it isn't easy. The water temperature in the mountain lake only reaches about 10 degrees, and near the shore, it sometimes gets covered with ice. However, the hermits claim that they don't feel the cold, as they possess certain supernatural abilities that others don't have. They call themselves lake dwellers, which in their language sounds like Cod's son. According to the representatives of this tribe, they are special, completely different from the surrounding human beings. A French investigator who traveled through the Peruvian Andes met these people and studied their way of life, and they insisted that they have nothing to do with human beings at all, since their ancestors were on Earth long before humans. The Uru believe they lived on the planet before any civilizations, when the stars were new and darkness covered everything. They are ancient beings who once had a different appearance, but gradually acquired human features. The Uru identify themselves with all stone gods and believe that they are representatives of a silicon-based form of life. That is why they do not feel the cold of the wind and can live in extreme conditions. Inside, they have black blood, and their heads are of a different shape. They speak a language that is incomprehensible to other indigenous peoples because it is not human. The researcher recorded all this based on their account. Traces of the gods. In the Ain Dara temple in northern Syria, in the arid lands, there is a unique archaeological site, the Ain Dara complex of structures surrounding a majestic central temple, which is unmatched in its features. One of its remarkable features is the giant footprints on the threshold, each up to 1 meter long, clearly indicating their non-human origin. Local residents say a deity left the footprints, and the temple resembles the biblical description of Solomon's temple. The temple dates back to the Iron Age of the Syro-Hittite kingdoms, which emerged after the collapse of the Hittite Empire around 1180 BC and lasted until 700 BC. Was discovered in 1955. Archaeological excavations made it possible to study its structure and decorations in more detail. The temple stands on a mound and is surrounded by a gallery, with its foundation made of massive basalt blocks. The walls are decorated with intricate carvings depicting geometric patterns and mythical animals, which testifies to the high craftsmanship of its creators. The entrance is guarded by lions and sphinxes carved from stone. Nevertheless, it is still unknown to whom exactly the temple was dedicated. There is a suggestion that it might have been dedicated to the goddess Ishtar, but there is no exact information. The giant human footprints not only confirm the connection of the structure with ancient myths and deities, but also emphasize its cultural, religious, and mystical significance. However, in 2018, a huge part of this temple was destroyed by airstrikes. The golden helmet that was buried for the gods. April 7, 1976. Galicia, northwestern Spain. The village of Lero. Jose Maria Vicente is digging the ground for a shed. His shovel hits something hard. He thinks it's a stone, pulls it out, and it shines. A neighbor was passing by and saw a golden gleam. The rumor spread around the area before Vicente even realized what he had found. The Lero golden helmet. That's what this object is called now, the Bronze Age. Around 1800 BC, it weighs 270 grams. It's thin with detailed engraving all over its surface. It's called a helmet, but it was physically impossible to wear it in battle. The metal is too thin. Any blow and that's it. It was a ceremonial item, a ritual object. It was made not to protect the body, but for something else. The evidence is in how it was found. The helmet was inside a ceramic vessel, carefully packed, deliberately buried. This wasn't a loss, it was an offering, a gift to gods or spirits that have been gone from our world for 3,000 years. It seems similar items were found in Ireland and Britain. This means that there was a unified symbolic tradition along the entire Atlantic coast. People who had never met in their lives made the same ritual objects and buried them in the same way, a common language without words. Vicente didn't sell the find, didn't melt it down, and handed it over to the authorities. He received a small compensation not matching its value, but the helmet remained in Spain. The museum became a symbol of the region. At the find site, a time capsule was recently buried. 3,000 years ago, gold was buried for the gods. Today, a message is buried for descendants. The same gesture after 3,000 years. Life inside the volcano. If the previous structures were built solely for war or supply, then this place proves that underground in Iran, you can not only survive, but live full lives for centuries. We are heading to the foot of Mount Sahand, to the unique village of Kandavan. From a distance, this place looks like a giant anthill or a set from a science fiction movie. Here, people didn't build houses out of bricks. They literally carved their homes inside solidified lava. These unusual cone-shaped rocks are called Quran. They were formed millions of years ago after a powerful eruption, when streams of molten material mixed with ash and mud. Over time, wind and water turned these boulders into sharp peaks as tall as a 5-story building. But the most interesting part began about 700 years ago. Legends say that the first inhabitants came here seeking refuge from the advancing Mongol army. They discovered that volcanic tuff is soft enough to work with, but when it comes into contact with air, it becomes as strong as granite. Inside each of these stone cones, there is a fully functional, multi-level apartment. Usually the first floor is used as a livestock pen, the second and third as living rooms, and at the very top there are storage rooms. The walls are up to 3 meters thick. This creates a unique thermos effect. While icy winds rage outside and the temperature drops to -20, pleasant warmth is maintained inside. In summer, when the sun literally melts the stone, these caves remain refreshingly cool. The engineering of Kandavan is impressive in its simplicity and effectiveness. Every window and every niche is carved in such a way as to make the most of the sunlight throughout the day. Inside the rocks, staircases are carved to connect the floors, and the walls are polished smooth. The most amazing thing is that Kandavan is not some lifeless museum. People still live here. Today, inside these ancient caves, you can see modern televisions, refrigerators, and even high-speed internet. The residents have adapted ancient technology to meet the needs of the 21st century, creating what is possibly the most eco-friendly and secure housing on the planet. Kandavan vividly demonstrates an important trait of Iranian culture, the ability to use the features of the landscape for protection and everyday living. This is living proof that people are capable of turning even harsh volcanic rocks into a cozy home that cannot be destroyed by time or wars. The underground temple, Many have heard of the Incas' mysterious, fascinating megaliths, but few people know that there is a similar structure on the island of Malta, which leaves scientists baffled. The Republic of Malta is a tiny island nation located on the Maltese archipelago in the Mediterranean. Until recently, no one suspected that a huge underground temple labyrinth was hidden beneath it. It was only discovered at the beginning of the 20th century. Based on the pottery fragments found inside, archaeologists concluded that it was built about 6,000 years ago by ancient people. They carved out more than 30 rooms in the limestone and connected them with stairs and tunnels. Human skeletons and animal bones were found in them, so some scientists believe that the place was used for burials. However, it is unclear why such a large number of rooms would be needed for this purpose. Therefore, this version remains only a hypothesis. The rooms are mostly round or oval in shape and are arranged rather chaotically. In addition, some rooms lead down to lower levels that extend even deeper underground. The total area of the temple is about 500 square meters, which is quite a lot for an underground structure carved out by hand. The walls of the cave are covered with geometric drawings. In addition, a statue of a woman was found inside. Archaeologists suggested that it was probably a goddess of female power and fertility, since in those times a matriarchy prevailed in this part of the world. But the most mysterious thing is not even the existence of the underground labyrinth, but one of its rooms, the oracle's chamber. It belongs to the so-called acoustic structures that ancient people built all over the world. These rooms are built in such a way that they allow sounds to resonate at a certain frequency. Similar rooms can be found in the Egyptian pyramids as well. Scientists do not fully understand how this works or what the purpose of such rooms is. The oracle room in the Maltese temple is made in the form of an ellipsoid niche in the wall. Words spoken there in a low male voice immediately spread throughout all the rooms. They will be heard even in the farthest corners, but all other sounds spoken in a different tone are muffled, and no one can hear them. This phenomenon remains mysterious, along with other inexplicable phenomena left to us by the builders of antiquity. The Amber Room. The Amber Room is one of the greatest wonders of the world. It is often described as the eighth wonder of the world. Originally created in the early 18th century for the Prussian kingdom, it was presented to Peter the Great in 1716 as a symbol of the Russo-Prussian alliance. Subsequently, the room was transported to St. Petersburg and installed in the Catherine Palace in Tsarskoye Selo. Made from several tons of amber, it was a masterpiece of decorative art, adorned with gold leaf and mirrors, creating a warm, glowing interior. During World War II, when Nazi troops captured Tsarskoye Selo, the Amber Room was dismantled and transported to Königsberg, now Kaliningrad, Russia, where it was displayed in a museum. After the war, all trace of the room was lost, and its whereabouts remain one of the greatest mysteries of the 20th century. For decades, researchers, historians, and treasure hunters have tried to find the Amber Room. There are various theories about its fate. Some claim that it was destroyed during the bombings. Others believe that it is still hidden underground or in sealed vaults. In 2003, the reconstruction of the Amber Room was completed in Russia, recreated by craftsmen using drawings and photographs of the original, which became a symbol of the restoration of a lost cultural treasure. The search for the Amber Room is about more than just the desire to find a lost treasure. It is a journey through history, culture, and international relations, reflecting humanity's endless desire to reconnect with the past and pass it on to future generations. The Ancient Tomb. In the shadow of the blue doors of an ancient Ming Dynasty tomb in China, a centuries-old mystery was hidden. Upon opening the gates, archaeologists encountered an unusually luxurious tomb dating back 400 years. The tomb, discovered during preparations for highway construction in Shanxi province, is impressive for its preservation and refined craftsmanship. Researchers confirmed that the tomb, dated to the Ming Dynasty, was the resting place of nobility. Two luxurious wooden coffins with exquisite patterns and porcelain vessels testify to the high status of the deceased. The epitaphs hint at noble origins, and the magnificently decorated coffers indicate a connection to the royal court. Among the finds are furniture, writing instruments, and artistic artifacts, highlighting the refined lifestyle of the elite of that era. Despite numerous hypotheses, The exact reasons for such luxury and the purpose of the tomb remain unknown, adding mystery to the history of the Ming Dynasty, a period of flourishing culture, art, and science in China. Irish ring forts, or circular fortifications, are one of the types of ancient Irish settlements, surrounded by several levels of banks and ditches. Over time, the structures were abandoned and their significance forgotten, leading locals to believe they belonged to fairies. That's why these places shouldn't be visited, to avoid angering the little folk. On the other hand, ring forts attract attention because it is believed that leprechauns hide their gold in pots there. Other ring monuments in Ireland are perceived in much the same way. The ring is considered a portal to another world full of adventures. At the same time, these structures are seen as a dark, gloomy place with negative energy. If there is a ring fort nearby, you should treat it with respect and reverence, and not try to destroy it, because this will bring down the legendary leprechaun curse, which manifests itself in the death of livestock, family members, and discord in relationships. In 2011, this fate befell the Irish developer Sean Quinn, who was left without a penny to his name. He was among the country's most influential and wealthy people. He chose to move the ring fort on his property because it interfered with a new quarry's development. The discovery of mass graves in the Katyn forest near Smolensk still causes a lot of controversy in Russia. In 1943, German troops advancing on the Soviet Union discovered numerous graves of Polish officers. The Soviet Union denied its involvement, claiming that the Nazis were to blame for everything. According to the official Western account, in 1940, by order of the highest leadership of the USSR, thousands of Polish officers, police officers, scientists, and public figures who had been taken prisoner during the Soviet invasion of Poland in September 1939 were executed. These mass killings carried out by the NKVD became known as the Katyn Massacre. This discovery caused a wide international outcry, becoming an important piece of evidence in accusations that the Stalinist regime had committed war crimes. For Poland, Katyn became a symbol of national tragedy and betrayal by the Soviet government, which they had previously considered an ally. However, not everything is so clear-cut. There is also another opinion supported by documents regarding this tragic event. In 1943, when the Nazis suffered defeat in the Battle of Stalingrad, the leadership of the Third Reich, particularly the powerful propaganda machine led by Goebbels, wanted to create internal division. The Nazis themselves executed the Polish officers and then supposedly discovered them. This was done to point to Stalin's repressions and to drive a wedge between the Allies. However, some Polish journalists did not believe the Nazis and conducted their own investigation. Some of the documents confirming the crimes of the Nazis were prepared for the Nuremberg Tribunal, where the Nazis were tried. However, under strange circumstances, everyone who tried in any way to whitewash Stalin's regime at that time began to die. In a surprising way, documents disappeared, as did everyone who was in any way involved in investigating this tragedy. Nevertheless, the Nuremberg International Military Tribunal brought charges for the Katyn crime against Hermann Göring and Alfred Jodl, who was acting as chief of the Wehrmacht High Command. These are facts documented by official records. It's hard to believe that the Soviet army was involved in this execution, especially since the Nazi allies have an even more terrible tragedy involving the Poles to their name. This is the Volhynia Massacre, which many people now try not to remember. At the same time, this event is thoroughly confirmed and documented all over the world. The underground palace of 1,001 columns, the oldest and second largest underground reservoir in Byzantine-era Istanbul, is remarkable not only for its architecture, but also for the many mysteries that only grow with time. The Philoxenos cistern is located in the Bin Berderek district of the Fatih municipality, 200 meters from the Column of Constantine, 150 meters from the other luxurious Theodosius II cistern, and 100 meters from the Sultan Ahmet tram stop. The reservoir entrance is easy to miss, as it's quite inconspicuous. In the Ottoman Empire, this unused structure was known as Bin Berderek, the 1,001 columns. In fact, there were originally 224 columns in the cistern, and now 212 of them have been preserved. When you enter the room, The abundance of columns makes it seem like there really are an enormous number of them, but it turns out that in the Turkish language, the word bin bir simply means a large number, like 1001, or just a lot. Researchers and travelers are especially interested in the mysterious symbols on the columns, which are still clearly visible. Researchers agree these are stonemason marks made on Marmara Island during preparation of the cistern columns. However, conspiracy theorists are convinced that these symbols belong to the Freemasons, who began using the abandoned cistern for their meetings soon after the fall of Constantinople. The Thracian Chariot. In November 2008, archaeologists discovered a unique bronze chariot in an ancient Thracian tomb in southeastern Bulgaria. The bronze chariot, dated to the late 2nd century AD, is richly decorated and is one of the few found on the territory of Bulgaria. It serves as evidence of the ritual practices that accompanied the funerals of prominent individuals of the Thracian people who believed in a better life after death. The deceased were offered all the items they would need in life, and the higher the status of the person, the richer the burial gifts were. The bronze chariot, covered with wood, is decorated with scenes from Thracian mythology, images of the god Eros, a leaping panther, and a mythical creature with the body of a panther and the tail of a dolphin. The wheels of the chariot are about 1.5 meters in diameter. Finding a four-wheeled chariot, especially with wheels of such a large diameter, is extremely rare. At the archaeological excavation site, well-preserved wooden parts of the chariots were found. Table ceramics, glassware, wooden and leather items, probably parts of horse harnesses, and other offerings that were used for the burial of a wealthy Thracian aristocrat. Nazi gold in the Alpine Lakes. Legends about Nazi gold hidden in the depths of the Alpine Lakes at the end of World War II have fascinated researchers, treasure hunters, and historians for many years. According to rumors, in its final days, the Third Reich sent valuable cargo, including gold, precious stones, and works of art, to these hard-to-reach areas in an attempt to hide them from the advancing Allied forces. One of the most famous stories is the alleged storage by the Nazis of significant reserves of gold in the lakes of Austria, particularly in Lake Toplitz. According to legends, the Nazis used this and other mountain lakes as natural storage for their treasures, sinking boxes filled with gold and valuables in the hope of preserving them for the future revival of the Reich. Post-war searches for Nazi gold attracted numerous expeditions, some of which confirmed the presence of artifacts from that era in the waters of the lakes, including counterfeit British pounds produced by the Nazis as part of Operation Bernhard. However, most of the claimed treasures have never been found, which only fuels interest in this topic. There are many theories about why the Nazis might have chosen the Alpine lakes to hide their treasures. One of them is that the mountainous terrain and the deep, cold waters of the lakes provided ideal conditions for preserving valuables for a long time. In addition, the legends about the treasures could have served as disinformation, aimed at distracting the Allies from more important tasks. The tomb of Polish King Casimir IV Jagiellon. When it was first discovered, researchers jokingly said that, like other royal tombs, it might be cursed and could claim the lives of many people. They turned out to be right. Some of the archaeologists and researchers who examined the remains of the royal body and the wooden coffin tragically died from unknown infections and heart attacks. 4 more people died under strange circumstances. Then, over the next few years, researchers from the group died from diseases, including cancer. More than 15 people who studied the royal remains died in total. Soon, doctors found the killer. It turned out to be the mold Aspergillus flavus, which at one time caused many deaths after the opening of Tutankhamun's tomb. Scientists concluded that only people with excellent health and resistance to various spores and fungi should open tombs and conduct research, so they don't become victims of another ancient curse.
Исследователи
The Voynich Manuscript. The Voynich Manuscript has been intriguing scientists and cryptographers for more than 600 years. This document, filled with encrypted texts and unusual illustrations, has given rise to many hypotheses, ranging from magical spells to obscene texts. But researchers from Macquarie University have concluded that the content of the manuscript is not only decent, but also contains information that, in the early 15th century, was not meant for everyone. Dr. Keegan Brewer, the lead author of the study, claims that the manuscript is a medieval guide to gynecology, including information about sex, contraception, and the treatment of gynecological diseases. The encrypted nature of the text suggests that access to this information was deliberately restricted to a certain group of female readers, which is a vivid example of gender censorship. The manuscript contains numerous illustrations depicting plants, animals, and people, but researchers were particularly drawn to the drawings of naked women pointing to their genitals. These images clearly hint at the gynecological focus of the text. Women's secrets, as women's health was called in the Middle Ages, were subject to strict censorship despite active study. The patriarchal culture of that era feared the female body and its functions, which was reflected in the medical texts of the time. One of the largest and most mysterious illustrations, known as the rosettes, may symbolize the commonly accepted views on sex and contraception of that time. According to the beliefs of that time, the uterus consisted of 7 chambers and the vagina had 2 openings. Perhaps the 9 circles in the illustration symbolize these anatomical details. Thus, the Voynich manuscript may not be just a collection of meaningless symbols or a joke, as some have suggested, but an important historical document revealing approaches to women's health in medieval Europe. Dinosaur bones are not bones. When we visit a paleontological museum or look at pictures of dinosaur skeletons, we usually imagine scientists and paleontologists digging up ancient dinosaur bones, connecting them together, and creating the skeleton of an ancient inhabitant of the planet. However, what we see in museums and in photographs are not bones at all. All the organic material that once made up dinosaurs naturally decomposed after their death millions of years ago. So what we can actually see in a museum is just stones. What kinds of fossils are there? Imprints of hard tissues. There can be imprints of hard tissues in fossilized sedimentary rocks. For example, the skeleton of a small sea animal imprinted on a stone. Mineral copies of bones, teeth, and shells. This is another type of fossil. Fossils in the full sense of the word. Mineral copies of bones, teeth, and shells. In order for the Earth to create a fossil, allowing us to see what prehistoric creatures looked like, certain conditions must be met. The most important of these is that the remains must be protected from wind and rain. This happens when an animal ends up in a deposit of sedimentary rocks, sand, or gravel. A layer of ash is also a good and reliable covering that helps the formation of fossils. Fossil remains are formed in different ways. Mineral salts can penetrate the pores of decaying bones and crystallize there, protecting the bones from further decay. Acids can dissolve bones or shells, leaving a cavity in the fossilized rock that exactly matches the shape of those bones and shells. Sometimes these cavities are filled with crystallizing solutions of mineral salts. After crystallization, the salts precipitate, creating an exact stone replica of the fossilized bone or shell. The fortresses of the legendary assassins. We are heading to the harsh Elbrus Mountains, where the ruins stand frozen on inaccessible peaks. Ruins whose very mention once sent shivers down the spines of rulers in both the east and the west. This is Alamut, the eagle's nest and the main citadel of the Order of Assassins. But if you think all their power was in their high walls, you are deeply mistaken. The real secret to the survival of Hassan ibn Sabah and his followers was sealed deep within the rocky foundation. Alamut was built on top of a narrow cliff accessible by only one steep path. But the main engineering triumph of the assassins was a self-sustaining system, hidden from any besieging army. To withstand sieges by entire armies for years, a complex network of storage rooms was carved inside the rock. Archaeologists discovered giant water reservoirs and grain storage rooms that went down dozens of meters. The walls of these rooms were coated with a special lime solution that prevented the water from spoiling and the grain from rotting. Thanks to this, a handful of people could ignore an army of thousands outside the walls for several years. But the most mystical thing is the system of secret passages. Legends claim the assassins mastered disappearing during battle. Modern excavations confirm hidden tunnels ran from the citadel's center to concealed crevices at the mountain's base. This allowed spies to leave the fortress unnoticed even during a complete blockade. It was through these rabbit holes that those very assassins slipped out, their daggers finding viziers and sultans in their own tents. The engineering of the assassins was so advanced that they used a system of light signals transmitted from one mountain fortress to another. The order had an entire chain of such underground and above-ground forts throughout Iran. Each of them was autonomous and connected to its neighbors by invisible threads of communication. When the Mongol horde finally took Alamut in 1256, they spent months just to destroy these fortifications. The conquerors were astonished. They expected to find savage fanatics, but instead saw one of the richest libraries in the world and engineering systems that had no equal in the entire empire of Genghis Khan. Alamut still holds undiscovered voids. Many tunnels were deliberately collapsed to hide the last secrets of the order. Today, seeing these weathered stones, it's hard not to wonder if the assassins really could have controlled half the world from their underground hideouts in the 11th century. What are those who control these cities today capable of?
Сегодня.
A workshop from the Bible. Archaeologists in Israel have come across a site that immediately strengthens the aura of biblical mystery. In Kiryat Gat, just a few dozen kilometers from Tel Aviv, they discovered an ancient workshop for making flint blades, which is more than 5,000 years old. At first glance, these are just ruins and piles of stone. But the more closely you look at the finds, the clearer it becomes that this is not just a random accumulation of tools, but traces of organized production. Here, long sharpened blades and massive stones used to work them have been preserved. Hundreds of underground pits lined with bricks were found in the ground. Some were used as storage, others as dwellings, or even as ritual rooms. Everything suggests that this place was a center of craftsmanship and trade, a real city long before the familiar civilizations appeared. Ordinary flint rods were turned into knives and sickles here, with lines that look as if a true master with tools that shouldn't have existed in that era had worked on them. Researchers noticed that the blows to the stone were not random, but controlled, as if the craftsman knew exactly where and how hard to press. Everything was crafted with jeweler's precision, which preserved the item's shape and sharpness for thousands of years. This workshop brings the Bible to life. In the Old Testament, the Canaanites are described as the first inhabitants of the Promised Land, and now we see their tangible footprint. These were people with their own craftsmen, trades, and commerce, not just a shadow from legends. And it's especially symbolic that the finds date back to the era of Abraham. It turns out that archaeology step by step confirms what until recently existed only in sacred texts. The mysterious mechanism from Peru. You probably think that the history of ancient Peru is only about megaliths and mysterious lines in the desert. But what was discovered recently in the highlands of the Andes literally made scientists hold their breath. In a sealed stone box at a depth corresponding to 1500 BC lay an object called X11. It is a perfectly round bronze sphere, inside of which something impossible is hidden. Through the slots in the metal you can see gears and shafts, and the body is inlaid with quartz crystals that are fitted with precision. For that era, such mechanics are like finding a modern wristwatch in Tutankhamun's tomb. Officially, such technologies did not appear until 3,000 years later. But the most frightening thing was discovered during the X-ray. The mechanism inside still hasn't been damaged by corrosion. It looks alive. Now a group of engineers is preparing the experiment of the decade. They are planning to try very carefully to turn the main gear inside a vacuum chamber. Scientists hope that the mechanism will speak again in the language of mechanics and reveal how, 1,500 years ago, this impossible device was created in the mountains. Shigir idol. In 1894, an astonishing discovery was made in the Shigirsky Bog, located in the Urals in Russia, the Great Shigir idol. This ancient wooden totem, carved from a single trunk of larch, is more than 11,500 years old. This makes it one of the oldest known wooden artifacts in world history. The uniqueness of the Shigir idol lies not only in its age, but also in the complexity of its engravings, which may indicate the existence of a developed symbolic system among ancient societies. Despite numerous studies, many mysteries surrounding this artifact remain unsolved to this day. The symbols and images on the idol remain a mystery, continuing to spark debates among scientists and archaeologists about the culture and beliefs of ancient people who lived on Earth tens of thousands of years ago. Such discoveries not only demonstrate the rich history of the region, but also suggest that many territories that are now part of the Russian Federation were inhabited and developed over thousands of years. In addition, an interesting aspect of Russian history is the story of its territorial expansion. For example, Alaska was part of the Russian Empire until 1867. Later, as is well known, this land was sold to the United States of America. There were also plans to expand into California in the early 19th century, where Russia established trading posts and forts, such as Fort Ross. One of the most remarkable episodes is the story about the possible annexation of the island of Madagascar in the 17th century. If you are interested in Russian history and the possibilities of its territorial expansion, you should definitely watch the video dedicated to lectures about the little-known pages of the history of the Russian Empire and the states that could have become part of it. The video link is in the description below. Near the coast of Abkhazia, scientists, as part of an international underwater archaeological expedition, discovered important archaeological finds. With the help of special equipment and divers, they explored depths from 1 to 60 meters in the waters near the cities of Gudauta and Sukhum. The most significant find was the discovery of the remains of a medieval structure in the Sukhum Bay, at the mouth of the Besledka River, where the ancient city of Dioscurius was presumably located. In this area, where an ancient stele had previously been found, archaeologists discovered a semicircular masonry, probably a tower with attached walls. It is made of large pebbles with a limestone mortar. There is pottery present in the masonry. Due to the large amount of sand and silt in the water, it was difficult to photograph the object. So a detailed survey is planned for 2024, 2025. In the waters near the city of Gudauta, archaeologists found many vessels from the ancient and medieval periods, including an amphora at a depth of 40 meters, 2,000-year-old flowers that survived a fire. Almost 2,000 years ago, the inhabitants of ancient Teotihuacan gathered small bouquets of flowers, placed them beneath a bonfire, and set it alight. And now archaeologists have found the preserved bouquets. The pyramid was quite large, 23 meters tall, taller than the 20-meter Great Sphinx in Egypt, but much shorter than the 137-meter Pyramid of Khufu. The Teotihuacan Pyramid was part of the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, built in honor of Quetzalcoatl, the serpent deity who was worshipped in Mesoamerica. Excavations were carried out in the deepest part of the tunnel, at a depth of 18 meters. In addition to the bouquets, scientists also found ceramics and figurines of Tlaloc, the deity of rain and fertility. Most likely, the bouquets were ritualistic and probably used in ceremonies related to fertility. Scientists hope they will be able to understand more once they identify the type of flowers. The bouquets were found just a few weeks ago. One of them contained 40 flowers and the other 60. A large number of charred pieces of wood were found nearby. Apparently, the flowers were placed on the ground and covered with wood. Judging by the amount of wood, it was the wood that protected the bouquet from the fire. The tunnel where the excavations are taking place was discovered back in 2003. Over the years, thousands of artifacts have been found there: pottery, sculptures, cacao beans, obsidian, animal remains, and even a miniature landscape with a mercury pond. Archaeologists still haven't fully figured out how the ancient locals created this tunnel and how they used it. The impact of asteroids and contact with the gods. The asteroid that is believed to have wiped out the dinosaurs about 66 million years ago left a significant mark on the Yucatan Peninsula. This impact created the Chicxulub crater, which is still an important geological site. Although this cataclysm occurred long before the rise of the Mayan civilization, its long-term geological and ecological consequences may have influenced the formation of the region where this culture later developed. Archaeological finds, such as cities and structures destroyed and buried under layers of sediment, may indirectly support the theory of cataclysms that occurred in Yucatan. Nevertheless, there is no direct evidence that the Maya knew about the asteroid that destroyed the dinosaurs or had any information about them. The idea that the Maya could have had contact with dinosaurs is scientifically unfounded. Dinosaurs became extinct long before the appearance of the first humans, let alone the Maya civilization. However, in their mythology and art, you can find depictions of creatures that can be interpreted as legendary or mythical animals. But this is not evidence of their actual contact with dinosaurs. Researchers sometimes find dinosaur fossils in Mesoamerica, but these discoveries date back to times that predate human history. Such findings may be of interest to geologists or paleontologists, but they do not support the theory of Maya contact with dinosaurs. Knowledge of ancient cataclysms may have been integrated into their mythology and beliefs related to natural phenomena and the actions of the gods. The Maya believed in the cyclical nature of time and recurring catastrophes, which could have reflected their understanding of the past and their anticipation of future events. Ancient Roman giant. In the area near Rome, archaeologists discovered a unique ancient human skeleton with gigantism. Standing at 202 centimeters tall, the man stood out among his 3rd century contemporaries, whose average height was 167 centimeters. Gigantism is an extremely rare condition, affecting about 3 people per million, and is associated with a dysfunction of the pituitary gland during childhood. Previously, partial skeletons were found in Poland and Egypt, which were presumed to indicate gigantism, but the Roman discovery became the first confirmed case from antiquity. The skeleton was found in 1991 during excavations of a necropolis in Fidenae under Roman rule. The archaeological team immediately noted the unusual length of the tomb, and later studies confirmed the peculiarities of the bones. They discovered damage to the skull consistent with the pituitary tumor, as well as disproportionately long limbs and signs of bone growth in early adulthood. The early death of the man, presumably between the ages of 16 and 20, may indicate issues related to gigantism. The skeleton was found without any burial items, and his burial did not differ from the traditions of that time, which suggests that he was accepted by society. The symbolism of this find highlights the interest of the Roman upper class in people with physical differences. The Nazi gold train. The legend of the Nazi gold train is one of the most intriguing stories associated with the end of World War II. According to this legend, in the final days of the war, when Nazi Germany was on the verge of defeat, a train loaded with gold, jewels, and works of art was sent from Breslau, now Wrocław, Poland, toward the Owl Mountains, where underground warehouses and bunkers were rumored to be located. This train is said to have disappeared without a trace in the chaos of the war's final days, leaving behind many questions and speculations. Some versions claim that the train was hidden in one of the many tunnels in the Owl Mountains area, whose entrances and exits were then blown up or sealed to hide the treasures from the approaching Allied forces. For decades, treasure hunters, researchers, and historians have tried to find the lost train, using both historical data and modern technology. Despite numerous expeditions and searches, no convincing evidence of the train's existence has been found. However, from time to time, new reports about possible discoveries appear in the media, reigniting interest in this mystery. Chorazin. It may surprise some, but Chorazin was once cursed by Jesus Christ himself. In the Gospels of Luke and Matthew, 3 such cities are mentioned, deprived of the Lord's mercy and cursed by Jesus. The first of them is Chorazin, and the other 2 are Bethsaida and Capernaum. After Nazareth, Jesus lived in Chorazin for 3 years and performed his miracles, but the inhabitants were deaf and blind to what he was doing. They did not want to, and did not even try to turn from their sinful ways and change their lives. Then Jesus cursed them for this. Before that, Chorazin was mentioned as one of the largest and most developed cities of that time. In the 3rd century AD, the city fell into decline. It was abandoned and looted. According to records, around the year 330, the city fell into decline due to a powerful earthquake, which was attributed to God's punishment and the fulfillment of the curse of the Son of Christ. But the dates of Jesus' life and the existence of the city simply do not match. Chichen Itza and its mysteries. Chichen Itza was of great importance to the Maya civilization as a political, economic, and religious center. This ancient city, located on the northern Yucatan Peninsula, was an important place for rituals and ceremonies connected to the gods and astronomical phenomena. Eric von Daniken, known for his theories about ancient aliens, drew attention to the El Castillo pyramid in his research. He suggested that the precision of the architectural and astronomical elements of the pyramid could indicate contacts between the Maya and extraterrestrial civilizations. Denikin noted that pyramids like El Castillo might have been built using technologies unknown to modern scientists. The symbolic entrance to the El Castillo pyramid during the equinox is associated with the worship of the god Kukulkan. On the days of the spring and autumn equinox, sunlight creates the illusion of a serpent descending the steps of the pyramid. This phenomenon was interpreted as the return of Kukulkan to Earth, which confirmed the importance of Mayan astronomical knowledge and their ability to design architecture in harmony with the movement of celestial bodies. The Maya believed in the return of the god Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, who symbolized rebirth and renewal. This belief was based on ancient myths and texts, such as the Popol Vuh and the Maya codices, which describe the cyclical nature of time and the return of the gods at certain moments in history. Kukulkan was an important deity associated with wind, water, and fertility, which made his cult especially significant for the agrarian Maya society. Modern archaeologists interpret these findings as evidence of the high level of development of astronomy and engineering among the Maya. They believe that the pyramids and other structures of Chichen Itza were built taking into account complex mathematical calculations and observations of the movements of celestial bodies. Tiny alien. Just 2 months after scientists in Peru exposed a hoax claiming that 2 dolls were actually alien bodies, the story about aliens is appearing online again. This time, a premature human fetus with an elongated skull found in Colombia is being linked to little green men and ancient races. However, skeptics confirmed that the skeleton belongs to an unborn human fetus. The main reason why many people believe such absurd headlines about aliens is that some of the world's largest media outlets publish hyperdramatic articles that present logical fallacies. Competent scientists and anyone who has read an anatomy textbook in school can say for sure that the remains belong to a stillborn human fetus. The so-called alien has an elongated skull, which, combined with its unusual eyes and 10 ribs on each side of the body, unlike the typical 12 in humans, led to claims of extraterrestrial origin. It turned out that the reporter who published the story in the Daily Mail received the first image of the alien anonymously through WhatsApp. That's the extent of the archaeological discoveries. While some speculate about an ancient tiny race of humans that coexisted with the Aymara people of Van Dyck hundreds, if not thousands, of years ago, a study by anatomists from Stockholm University in Sweden and Stony Brook Medical School in the US shows that the skeleton belongs to a premature human fetus. A book was returned to the English library. The late fee for all the overdue days could have been enough to repair the building, but of course no one will find the offender. And the book, published in the early 17th century, has now become a real gem in the book collection. The book now belongs to the Cathedral of Saints Peter and Paul in the English city of Sheffield. The cathedral was built in the 1280s, and for a long time it had a library that was popular among the locals. The library vanished long ago, and now even the clergy don't know where it might have been. The publication given to the cathedral is titled Faith and Practice of the English Church. Judging by the notes, it was checked out back in 1708. However, the reader turned out to be so negligent that he never returned it for the rest of his life. As a result, the work spent centuries on the shelf in the homes of several generations, until 3 centuries later, someone decided to return it. The return was made by a resident of Wales. The book had been with her godmother for many years, and returning it to the library was her dying wish. The witch, the dwarf, and the magician's pyramid. The ancient Mayan city of Uxmal, located on the Yucatan Peninsula, is a place where the unique architecture and mythology of ancient peoples merge with otherworldly landscapes. One of the most mysterious structures here is the Pyramid of the Magician, an astonishing building in both form and significance. This place is surrounded by magical lines. In particular, there is a story about a dwarf and a witch who supposedly built the Pyramid of the Magician. This legend exists only in the oral retellings of the local people, as it is not recorded in ancient texts. Different variations of this story are passed down from generation to generation. The story was first recorded in the 19th century by John Lloyd Stevens, an American explorer who published his observations in a book about his travels in Yucatan. One day he heard it from a local resident. According to the legend, where the pyramid now stands, there once was the hut of an old witch who wished to have an heir. With the help of magic, she created a creature from an egg that resembled a child. This little one quickly grew to the size of an adult, but remained as short as a dwarf. The witch was proud of him and dreamed that he would become a great ruler. At her command, the dwarf challenged the local king to a duel. The challenges proposed by the king seemed impossible, but each time the dwarf managed to overcome them using cunning and his mother's magic. For example, the king ordered the dwarf to build a house taller than all the buildings in the city in a single night. By morning, a majestic pyramid stood where the old hut had been. The final challenge was that the king and the dwarf had to break firewood over each other's heads. The witch prepared her son by placing a protective spell on his head. The king couldn't harm the dwarf, but in turn, the dwarf's blow took the king's life. Thus, the dwarf became the new ruler of Uxmal. In some versions of this legend, the dwarf is the god Itzama, who built the pyramid using magic. These stories may have emerged as an attempt to explain the unusual shape of the Pyramid of the Magician, which, according to archaeologists, was built over the course of 3 centuries. The bronze of the mysterious lures. We are heading into the harsh, hard-to-reach Zagros Mountains. For almost 100 years, objects have been found here that make scientists question the official chronology of technological development. This is the famous Luristan bronze. But behind the dry scientific name lies something truly frightening and inexplicable. Imagine elegant figurines that look like characters from the darkest fantasies or dreams. The main symbol of this culture is the so-called Master of Animals. It's a human figure holding in its hands 2 fantastic creatures that resemble griffins or demons. But the strangest thing is that the faces of these creatures often blend into human ones, and their limbs turn into snakes or the claws of predatory birds. This is surrealism created 3,000 years before the word even appeared in our language. The level of detail in these objects is simply astonishing. The masters of Luristan use the lost wax casting method, which allows for the finest details to be captured, right down to the expression in the eyes of these mythical creatures. But this is where the main mystery begins. According to official history, the people who created these masterpieces were nomads. They didn't have permanent cities, large workshops, or stationary furnaces. How could a people who were constantly on the move establish such a complex and high-tech production of metal items? Bronze casting requires temperatures above 1,000 degrees in stable conditions. Under nomadic mountain conditions, this is almost impossible. Some researchers suggest that the lures possessed secret mobile forges, the designs of which have been irretrievably lost. Others see these figures not just as decorations, but as cult objects that were used to communicate with another world. These bronze artifacts are found exclusively in graves. They accompanied their owners on their final journey, and each item was unique. There was no mass production here. Each figurine is unique and carries some kind of hidden code. Seeing these intertwined bodies of people and monsters, it's hard not to think the ancient Zagros Mountains inhabitants viewed the world very differently than we do. They lived surrounded by gods and demons whose images they captured in eternal metal with a skill that baffles even modern metalworkers. These discoveries turned the mountains of Iran into a giant cemetery of forgotten masters, whose secrets are still securely guarded by cold bronze. Secret tunnels under London. During construction work in London, a forgotten network of secret tunnels running beneath the city was discovered. These underground corridors, according to researchers, were used by the military and government agencies during World War II, both for protection from German bombings and for conducting secret operations. The tunnels stretch for several kilometers beneath the central part of the city, forming a complex network that once served as a hidden route for moving people and important documents, as well as for secret meetings of military command and government officials. Some of these underground passages lead to buildings of strategic importance, including military headquarters and government bunkers. The discovery confirms numerous rumors and legends among London residents about the existence of an extensive network of tunnels beneath the city. Until now, most of these underground structures have remained unexplored due to their secret status and restricted access. Archaeologists and historians consider this discovery important for understanding how London tried to protect its infrastructure and key figures during the most tense years of the war. Inside the tunnels, remains of old communication equipment, military gear, and even personal belongings were found, making them a valuable source for studying everyday life of that time. Research on the preservation of the discovered tunnels continues, and they promise to reveal even more secrets about the life and defense of the British capital during the dark years of World War II. At the Children's Cemetery on Ada Island, located in the northern part of the Aegean Sea, archaeologists have uncovered secrets of the ancient past by discovering burials that are hundreds of years old. This island, also known as Tenedos, is associated with myths about Tennes, a ruler during the time of the Trojan War, and served as a strategic point for military campaigns in ancient times. Under the guidance of Professor Turan Takaoglu from Çanakkale University, new discoveries were made in 2023 in the area of the ancient necropolis, where numerous items placed in pithoi and amphorae were found. Special attention was drawn to a Pythos grave from the 6th century BC, into which another burial was added later, in the 4th century BC. In this grave, figurines of goddesses and a bronze pin were discovered, which allowed scientists to delve deeper into the study of the beliefs and cultural traditions of that time. The figurines, reflecting Phrygian culture, indicate the worship of Cybele and Dionysus, which is characteristic of the dominant beliefs of the 4th century BC. The remains of a person aged 32,000 years. Chinese archaeologists discovered fossilized fragments of skulls in a cave in Henan province. Dating showed that one of the finds is about 32,000 years old. In addition, researchers unearthed a large amount of faunal material and stone tools. The question of when the territory of China was settled by early representatives of the genus Homo remains quite controversial, considering the numerous attempts by researchers to make their own finds appear older. According to most archaeologists, it is unlikely that humans appeared in East or Southeast Asia earlier than 2 million years ago. However, there are already enough finds that are 1.5 to 2 million years old. The ancestors of humans of modern anatomical type apparently appeared in China much earlier than in Europe. However, for a long time, the oldest reliable remains of sapiens east of the Arabian Peninsula were considered to be the bones from Tianyuan Cave, located near Beijing, as well as from Naya Cave in Borneo. A few years ago, during excavations in Fuyan Cave in Hunan Province, archaeologists discovered 47 human teeth that are at least 80,000 years old, which belong to Homo sapiens. Zombie grave. In a recently discovered burial site near Oppen in Saxony-Anhalt, Germany, archaeologists found amazing Bronze Age artifacts connected to ancient superstitions. The grave contained the remains of a man laid on his side, with his legs pinned down by a heavy stone about a meter long and 50 centimeters wide. In this way, those who buried him tried to prevent him from returning to the world of the living. According to the head of the excavation, U.V. Moas, the man aged between 40 and 60 was positioned facing east, which indicates the cultural rituals of that time. Moas suggests that the deceased either suffered from a serious illness or was not respected among his own people. It is claimed that the man could have been part of the bell beaker culture, which is characterized by a specific style of pottery. In those distant times, people sincerely believed in the existence of revenants, dead people seeking to return to the world of the living. The means of combating them were varied, from piercing bodies with spears to placing heavy stones on the bodies to prevent them from rising from the dead. Guillotine, Sanctuary of Caravaggio. The guillotine as a humane method of execution was proposed by Dr. Joseph Guillotin in 1791. He believed that it would provide quick and painless decapitation, unlike other methods that could cause prolonged and agonizing suffering due to the executioner's lack of skill. However, long before the French Revolution, this device was already used in other countries. In Ireland and Scotland, the guillotine was called the Scottish Maiden. In France, it was known as the Furniture of Justice, and in Italy, it was known as the Mandala. In one of the basements in Italy, in the sanctuary of Santa Maria del Fonte, In the village of Caravaggio, there is a guillotine that predates the French Revolution by more than 2 centuries. The sanctuary of Santa Maria del Fonte is famous for the legend of St. Mary's apparition to a shepherdess on May 26, 1432. Under this monumental structure, there is a corridor divided into 5 sections. In one of them, a primitive guillotine is kept, which is connected to the legend of the miracle. In 1520, a bandit sentenced to execution repented and asked Maria for forgiveness. It is said that the guillotine refused to behead him, sparing his life. This is one of the miracles associated with Saint Maria. The guillotine in the sanctuary is different from the French one. It is small and primitive. The blade is fixed under a heavy log, which was released and slid along guides, beheading the condemned. The Dragon Houses and Mount Ochi. The Dragon Houses on the island of Evia in Greece are mysterious megalithic structures that impress with their massiveness and precision. These ancient structures, built from huge stone blocks without the use of mortar, date back to around the 8th century BC. Legends associate the dragon houses with the gods, particularly Zeus, and describe them as places of sacred rituals and the dwelling of ancient dragons guarding these lands. Mount Ochi, where some of the dragon houses are located, is considered a place of contact with the gods because of its remoteness and majestic location. In ancient Greek mythology, mountains were commonly linked to the gods' homes and their appearances. This mountain, towering over the surrounding landscapes, could be perceived as a sacred place where divine encounters and rituals took place. Archaeologists face many difficulties when studying these megalithic structures. One of the main mysteries is how the ancient builders were able to transport and place such huge stone blocks on the tops of mountains. The logistical and technical aspects of their construction remain unclear, especially considering the lack of modern tools and equipment. The lack of precise information about when and why these structures were built makes them harder to study and interpret. According to legends, Zeus used these places for his meetings with people and other gods. The dragons mentioned in legends could have been symbols of his power and protection of sacred places. There is a theory that the dragon houses could have been places of contact with aliens. Supporters of this hypothesis claim that the unusual architecture and precise geometry of these structures indicate possible influence from extraterrestrial civilizations. They believe that the ancient Greeks might have interpreted encounters with aliens as contacts with gods, which was reflected in their myths and legends. A fantastic return. In the spring of 1969, a young student named Al Di Stefano was relaxing on the beach at Mount Sinai in New York. He had a gold ring with a garnet on his finger, a graduation gift. At one moment, it slipped off and disappeared into the water. Al rushed to search for it, but the current quickly hid the ring. He accepted that the ring was lost forever at the bottom of the bay. Decades passed. The student became an oncologist, moved to Texas, retired, and had long since stopped thinking about the loss. And then, 56 years later, Dave Orlovsky was searching on the same beach with a metal detector. His device gave a signal, and in the wet sand appeared a massive ring in perfect condition. It had the university crest and symbol on it, and the owner's name was engraved inside. Orlovsky first added the find to his collection, but his wife convinced him to find the owner. Through social media, Orlovsky reached out to university alumni and soon got in touch with Di Stefano himself. He was amazed, since the ring was found just half a mile from where he had lost it. The package with the find arrived to him in less than a week. Today, the now gray-haired doctor wears it on his hand again and says he's making up for lost years. Bhangar Fort is now one of the most popular tourist destinations in India. Because of this, the local authorities have even banned visiting the city at night. This is probably due to several stories after which it gained a reputation as a cursed place. Bhangar was founded in 1573 in the state of Rajasthan during the reign of King Bhagwant Das. It was supposed to become a royal residence for his second son. The fort had temples, palaces, many gates, and picturesque land at the foot of the mountain. But despite this, by 1783, there was not a single resident left in the fort, and the villagers moved their homes elsewhere. The city was cursed by the monk Baba Balnath. He allowed the construction of the fort, but on the condition that its walls and houses would not cast a shadow on his shrine. If this was violated, Baba threatened to destroy the city. Naturally, the king's descendant disobeyed him by building the walls higher than planned. The city was struck by the curse. It is believed that the monks' remains are buried in the ruins of Pangar. According to another story, the wizard Sinkia fell passionately in love with Princess Ratnavati, the ruler of Pangar. He cast a spell on her favorite perfume so that as soon as she touched it, she would fall in love with him. But Ratnavati found out about it and foiled his plan. The heartbroken and insulted lover cursed the fort and all its inhabitants. To break the curse, the new incarnation of Princess Ratnavati must be found, brought back to the fort, and the misfortunes will end. Churchill's secret bunker. In 2020, researchers in the United Kingdom made an astonishing discovery when they found one of the secret bunkers built to support Churchill's secret army, the existence of which few people knew about. This army, known as the Auxiliary Unit, was created at the beginning of World War II as an underground resistance in case German troops successfully invaded the territory of the United Kingdom. The bunker, found deep in the English countryside, was one of about 500 similar structures located throughout the country. It was a fortified underground shelter, equipped with everything necessary for a long stay, from sleeping quarters to storerooms, with weapons and ammunition. The bunkers were intended for small groups of armed civilians who were supposed to carry out sabotage, diversionary operations, and reconnaissance behind enemy lines in the event of an occupation. These secret units were formed at the initiative of Winston Churchill, who insisted on creating a resistance network capable of putting up substantial opposition. The members of this network were recruited from among particularly reliable and physically fit citizens and underwent specialized training. Skull with a metal plate. 2,000 years ago, somewhere in pre-Hispanic Peru, a man received a blow to the head. We don't know what caused it. Maybe a stone, maybe a club with a metal tip, maybe in battle, maybe in a ritual duel. But the skull fracture was so serious that without intervention he would have died. This is a medical fact that can be determined directly from the bone, and then someone took some metal. It was probably a fragment from a household item, a bowl, a fastener, or some fragment that happened to be at hand and was the right size and shape. It was processed, shaped to fit the fracture, and implanted directly into the skull bone. This skull is now kept at the Museum of Osteology in Oklahoma. It is about 2,000 years old, and it's one of the most awkward exhibits for people who think that ancient people were primitive because the patient survived. This is not an assumption. It's literally written in the bone. Regeneration began around the metal plate. Bone tissue started to grow around the implant, accept it, and fuse with it. This is a process that takes months. This means the person lived long enough after the surgery for their body to adapt to a piece of metal in their skull. Think about what this means in practice. Someone 2,000 years ago understood that you need to stop the bleeding, close the wound, and fix the bone in place. And they understood it well enough to do it with metal and not kill the patient with infection, blood loss, or shock from pain. There was probably anesthesia. Coca was known in Peru. There was definitely some form of sterilization or wound treatment. This is neurosurgery. In the 1st century AD, without hospitals, without education, without textbooks. By the way, the exact composition of the metal is still not determined. Museum representatives admit this. Research is ongoing. It could be copper, it could be an alloy. But even without knowing the composition, we know the main thing: it worked. Now, the second feature of this skull, it's elongated, intentionally stretched. Not a disease, not an anomaly, a tradition. In pre-Hispanic Peru, the elite were identifiable by their head shape. From birth, children's heads were tightly bound with special boards, and the skull gradually took on an elongated shape. This was a status symbol that couldn't be faked. It was formed over years from early childhood. This means that our warrior with metal in his head was a person of the upper class, which adds another layer to the story, the elite. So, he had access to the best people who knew how to do this. Maybe that's why he survived, while an ordinary soldier with the same fracture would simply die. Medicine. 2,000 years ago worked on the same principles as today. If you have money and connections, your chances are better. Some things never change. Leather shoes from the tomb. Chinese archaeologists are restoring 1,400-year-old leather shoes found in the Astana tombs in the capital of the ancient kingdom of Gaochang. German experts are helping with the restoration. Finding such old leather or textiles is rare as they decompose quickly when exposed to air. The shoes, taken from the archive of items excavated since the 1950s, are 24 centimeters long and consist of upper, shaft, and sole parts, sewn from goat leather with animal tendons. Archaeologists have studied the tombs for over a century. Since the 1950s, 456 tombs have been studied in 14 excavations, which have yielded about 10,000 valuable relics. The heat preserved many items that would have otherwise decayed, including 300 leather artifacts. Ancient shoes have also been found at other archaeological sites around the world. For example, hundreds of shoes or moccasins were found in the Wiyute Cave, which was inhabited about 850 years ago. On the shore of the Great Salt Lake, 207 moccasins made from animal hides were found, most of them children's. The soles of the shoes were made from a single piece of bison leather, lined with fur and stitched at the heel, which is characteristic of the Canadian style. The presence of such a large number of children's shoes indicates a thriving population, despite people leaving the region due to drought. These shoes were made by the promontory culture. In May 2014, the world's oldest pair of pants was discovered in China. Archaeologists found the remains of 2 nomads and 3,000-year-old patterned pants in western China, which supports the theory that the transition from tunics to pants was a practical solution for horse riders. It's impossible to say exactly when people started making clothes because fabrics decompose quickly, but estimates range from 100,000 to 500,000 years ago. The first clothes were made from hides, fur, grass, leaves, bones, and shells. The oldest dyed fibers were found in a cave in Georgia. They are 36,000 years old. The Roswell Incident. The Roswell Incident, which occurred in July 1947 in New Mexico, USA, remains one of the most discussed and mysterious chapters in the history of UFOs and Nazi Germany. The events began with the discovery of unidentified debris on a ranch near Roswell, which led to numerous speculations about the crash of an alien spacecraft. But as you may remember, the Nazis also tried to invent weapons that had never existed before, including something similar to flying saucers. That's why historians and conspiracy theory enthusiasts have linked these events together. Initially, the U.S. Air Force announced that a flying disc had been found, but soon the statement was withdrawn, and the official version changed to the crash of a weather balloon used for meteorological purposes. This change in position raised suspicions and gave rise to conspiracy theories, claiming that the U.S. government was hiding the truth about an encounter with aliens. In the following years, the Roswell incident became a cult event in ufology, around which an entire industry developed, including books, documentaries, and feature films, conferences, and even a theme park in Roswell. Ufology. Ufologists and researchers suggest that the military not only discovered UFO debris, but also alien bodies, a discovery they believe was kept strictly secret. The U.S. government, in turn, has repeatedly denied the existence of any evidence of an alien visit and emphasized that all secret projects related to Roswell were exclusively about military research and intelligence activities within the framework of the Cold War. In 1994, the Pentagon and the CIA published reports claiming that the debris belonged to the secret Project Mogul, which was intended to monitor Soviet nuclear tests at high altitudes. However, this evidence did not convince many conspiracy theory supporters, who continue to search for new proof of extraterrestrial involvement. In the previous video, I talked more about this incident and other archaeological discoveries related to UFOs, so I highly recommend watching it. See you in the next video on the channel.